Hi, I'm Gidon from thetechnologyman.com. I use my Apple Pencil mainly for writing notes on my iPad, but despite several attempts, I find writing on the bare glass screen unnatural. If you feel the same way, pretty much any matte screen protector will improve the experience. I released a video a few months ago comparing the quite expensive PaperLike matte screen protector against the cheapest one I could find on Amazon. I'll have a link to that review in the on-screen card and in the description below. I did marginally prefer the feel of the PaperLike, but on a basic iPad which doesn't have the laminated screen of all the other iPads in the range, the small air gap underneath the glass resulted in a slightly milky appearance with the PaperLike attached. This was very noticeable reading text, and more so when you weren't looking straight on. With the newer iPads and all the iPad Pros with their laminated screens that don't have that air gap, the reduction in sharpness is not as apparent, but there were still complaints of display noise, which I personally didn't really notice in everyday use. PaperLike was originally launched on a crowd-funded Kickstarter campaign. 2 years on, they've just started a new Kickstarter campaign for PaperLike version 2, and based on my last review, they've sent me an early sample to try out. The two improvements they're citing are more resistance when drawing and writing, and higher transparency with less display noise. So I thought I'd give it a try. It took me a few days to summon up the courage to peel off my perfectly installed PaperLike 1 and try out the new and improved version. I don't have the basic iPad anymore, I'm using PaperLike with a 10.5-inch iPad Pro. There are no improvements to the installation procedure, which despite their very helpful video guides, is still a tricky process. With my early sample, I didn't get the guide and dust stickers, but just used Scotch tape, which works fine. PaperLike 2 is the exact same thickness as PaperLike 1 at 0.12mm, just a fraction thicker than printer paper. You line up the PaperLike and then attach some tape to act as a hinge to install the protector like a book cover, with side one facing down. Since I'd just peeled off an existing protector, my screen was really clean, but I probably still should have cleaned it with the included wet and dry cloths. I tried to pick up any road dust particles with some more Scotch tape. You can then peel back side one's protective film, letting the PaperLike stick to the iPad's glass, hoping that no dust manages to sneak in. I had a lot of air bubbles to deal with that needed to be directed to the closest side of the screen, then you can peel off side 2 and attempt to remove any remaining bubbles. I was still left with quite a few bubbles that I couldn't shift. Some disappeared over the next couple of days in use, some that must have formed around a dust particle were still there despite my best efforts to keep everything dust free. You don't see them when you're using the iPad, but with the screen turned off it doesn't look very good. A few days later I installed the spare protector without filming the process and all the associated lighting paraphernalia that accompanies the filming. That doesn't help to keep the dust at bay. I was super careful and got a better result, but still not perfect. If you get a dust bubble near the edge of the screen and you're feeling brave, you can carefully lift up the side of the PaperLike with some Scotch tape and use another piece of Scotch tape to grab the offending dust particle. Alignment is a little easier with the new version. It's very slightly smaller than PaperLike 1, so there's a larger gap around the edge. This should also help a bit if you're using it with a case. The lip of a case can lift up the PaperLike when it's very close to the edge of the iPad. Also, the cutouts for the home button and camera have been enlarged, which also makes alignment slightly less critical. But I still wish they'd improved the installation procedure with this second iteration. It's just as hard to install dust and bubble free as PaperLike 1, which is disappointing. I don't think it's unreasonable at the price of PaperLike to include an installation frame. It would make the installation easier and quicker, and I think it would also help with dust, since you could keep the PaperLike completely face down while you peel off the protective film, the part of the process where dust can creep in, even following PaperLike's installation procedures to a T. It certainly feels rougher than the previous version, although I didn't really have any complaints with that previous texture. The new protector uses what PaperLike described as nanodots surface technology, which is meant to produce a rougher surface with less refraction. I don't know whether my PaperLike 1 had already lost some of its bite, but my initial impression of PaperLike 2 was it felt just too rough in comparison to what I was used to, especially using my fingers on the screen, which seemed to almost get stuck trying to slide around. And I initially found I had less control of the pencil, especially as my writing got smaller. But it's hard to say whether I quickly got used to it or if the initial grab of a new film wears off within a few hours of use. Either way, after using it for a day or so, I found writing on it fine and certainly no worse than with the PaperLike 1. But I can't say I really noticed any significant improvement either. I do still much prefer using the Apple Pencil on a screen protector like this and find it hard to go back to writing on plain glass. And it is subtle, but there is a more consistent writing and drawing experience using PaperLike 1 and now 2 compared to other matte protectors I've tried. It does still feel rougher to the touch, which is how I interact with the iPad most of the time, and I'm still getting used to that. It has a pretty similar sensation to dragging your finger on a piece of paper. I did notice the clarity was indeed better, not by a massive amount, and I'm not sure it'll be visible in the footage by the time it's uploaded to YouTube, but it's noticeable nonetheless. And the colour noise, which is only really present with a bright white background, was minimal. Overall, everything looks pretty crisp on my iPad Pro. You're still not going to forget you have a screen protector on, but it's not significantly interfering with the iPad's display, and the almost complete lack of glare does make general viewing more comfortable. I'm not able to test this on the basic iPad with the air gap, but I'd imagine the better transparency would improve things more dramatically. Please let me know in the comments if you get to try PaperLike 2 with a basic iPad. It's good to see a company listening to feedback and continually developing their product. PaperLike 2 does have a rougher texture than their previous version, and the transparency is indeed improved. This is quite an achievement, since you'd imagine these two features would directly compete with each other. I personally didn't have an issue with the roughness of the first version of PaperLike, and I took a day or two to get used to the new texture. But after another week of using the PaperLike 2 every day, I can't say I really notice any difference over the first version, writing and occasionally drawing with the Apple Pencil. I do still prefer the consistency of PaperLike screen protectors over other matte protectors I've tried so far. Where you do notice the rougher texture is with normal interaction with the iPad using your fingers. They have managed to make it feel, well, quite a lot like paper. This takes a bit of getting used to, even coming from PaperLike 1, let alone the smooth glass of a bare iPad. For me, the biggest upgrade is the improved transparency with this new version. Text and photos are a little crisper. Together with its anti-glare properties, I now prefer using the iPad with a PaperLike. But all this comes at a price. PaperLike 2 is going to be priced at €34, which is €5 more than the already expensive PaperLike 1. It's cheaper while the Kickstarter campaign is running, so check the link down below to see if any discounts are still available. But even so, it's a lot of money to spend on a plastic screen protector, and there are matte screen protectors on Amazon costing less than a third of the price. In my test, they might not offer quite the consistency of PaperLike with an Apple Pencil, but the difference is fairly subtle, especially for casual use. And there's no improvement to the installation process, which is still difficult to complete without any dust bubbles. But perhaps there's no easy solution here. If you already have PaperLike 1 perfectly installed on your iPad, I'm not sure you'll find it worth upgrading. Unless you have an iPad without a laminated screen, where the improved transparency will likely be more significant. But if you've been considering PaperLike, I think the improved clarity alone is enough reason to go for the new version. But what are your thoughts on PaperLike? Have you tried it? How does it compare to other cheaper matte screen protectors you've tried? I'd be interested to know your experiences. Don't forget to check out my video comparing PaperLike to the cheapest matte screen protector I could find on Amazon, if you haven't already. And as always, if you have any questions, please ask. I read every comment and I'll do my best to respond. I do hope you found this video useful. Please like the video if you did. I'm releasing videos every week on the latest technology and how to get the most out of it, so please make sure you subscribe. It helps more than you think. And don't forget to tap the bell icon if you want to get notified as soon as a new video gets uploaded. Thanks for watching.